Chapter 100. The Backdraft. The thought now started twisting in Nikki's heart as she began to question herself of whether or not she was just manipulating him to get her old way. I am my mother's daughter. I am that bitch. For Nikki, being as this way was second nature for her. She now thought how she had always had this way with him, and now coming to terms, and also truly coming to terms of where she might have gotten it. That bitch. This all had Nikki revolting this way about her. Oh, I did it again. I just manipulated him like some dumb lug again, like I always did back then. And for some reason, this all began to remind Nikki of her relationship with Michael's sister, Mary, and really how this all started. Back when Nikki and his family had moved from France, there was that first lonely year where Nikki had no friends and didn't know anybody, starting high school, and then came Mary. I wonder if, no, he doesn't. He doesn't know all that happened between me and her sister. And good thing too. Besides Michael, funny enough, Mary had really been the second closest person to her in all her life. What is it about these Connellys and the relationships I've had with them over the years? Nikki liked Mary, says Mary was her only real friend in those days. Her only friend, given how her and Mary's nature seemed to mesh well together. We were just both very, very observant people, quiet and observant and complex. Very complex and difficult to be around, hence why there was only the two of us. Although Nikki was the looker more, as she grew to be after her ugly duckling phase faded. Actually, Mary should have been the looker, since she's never went through any phase like that. But personality spoke volumes, and definitely in Nikki and not Mary. And considering how the girl never smiled hardly ever once that Nikki knew her, always frowning the way she did, just made her the less attractive one. Nikki then had come to know Mary for years, but never did she get to meet Michael all that time. And what was funny was, it felt like it was all surmounting to when she would. By the time she did, Nikki remembered how her friendship with Mary had begun falling apart. It had always been hard for Nikki to get close to anyone because of her issues with trust. So her and Mary's friendship mattered a lot to her. But then Mary began to grow fed up with her and her ways, as she began to realize the type of person Nikki was changing into. And then something else happened. That thing that always happens between women, always. Mary then all of a sudden had blown up on Nikki, and over something she wasn't even aware of that she had done until it was too late. Mary, I guess, had someone she was secretly infatuated with, and yes, exactly. Nikki had done something to have her become cross with her. I screwed him. Nikki didn't even know what she had done until it was too late, but after that night, her relationship with Mary then changed. That dry cow would never tell me anything. And what really pissed Nikki off was how Mary then supposedly forgave her after some time, supposedly. But I could tell, not really. After that mess, her relationship with Mary had a drastic change for the worst, and now nothing else felt the same anymore. Mary continued to stick around as if nothing had happened, still acting like she was Nikki's friend. But she would now have a different look in her eyes every time they'd see each other. You could always tell what a person really thinks of you the second they notice you're there, the second the two of you meet. After giving Nikki this split-second ugly look, Mary would then go on with another expression after repressing her that initial one, that true one, the one she purely felt about her the second she'd see her. But Nikki would notice, and then, after some time, she'd then feel Mary stare on the back of her neck, which felt like knives, slowly trying to sink their way into her skin. When she had her back turned to Mary, and eventually it all got to Nikki, and what really pained her about it was the fact that she was her only true friend at the time doing this, unflinchingly, unnervingly, unrelentingly eyeing her from the back as an enemy. Everyone eventually turns on me. Everyone. Beginning to grow scales on me, and when she realized that at the time, she felt like doing something about it, out of spite. Of course, going after that boy Mary was infatuated with again would have just been despicable, as if what I did instead wasn't. That, even Nikki felt like would be going too far. But she wanted to spite Mary, somehow, for secretly turning on her and never saying a word. Fucking bitch. Why did you continue sticking around with me pretending to be my friend? Was it because you were just that jealous of me? Did you do it out of envy and secretly want to find a way to get me back? Nikki then shook her head, shaking off those harsh thoughts as to get out of that old thought pattern. Those were just her feelings at the time, and she had come to terms long ago how petty and despicable she was to be feeling that way. She eventually decided to fuck Michael, to spite Mary. It was the only thing she could then come up with at the time, and she knew how much Mary hated Michael because of her issues with him and her father. Sometimes she just wouldn't shut up, stop complaining in her indifferent way as if it really didn't bother her how much that old war hero dad of theirs would give Michael so much attention but completely ignored her. Now, that's just so crazy. Their old man would beat the crap out of Michael, and she'd feel envious of him. But anyways, if I hadn't done what I did, me and Michael might have never gotten together. Nikki faced Michael and felt like talking about that night again. She felt like she had to, even though she knew it was probably going to completely break the spell she had on him now. Looking at Michael, looking like some ignorant child, happy and excited about how he felt about what Nikki told him, began to make Nikki pity him again. Michael, cringed out Nikki. What? But then looking back into Michael's face and seeing how gleefully he was smiling bashed Nikki's resolve and made her cower from the thought. Nothing. Nikki sighed. Nothing, Michael. I'm happy that you're happy, said Nikki. But then Nikki noticed that childlike look of glee that was on Michael's face deplete away anyways. And seeing this, Nikki freaked. Is he sensing I'm keeping something from him? Michael, you seem to be feeling better a minute ago. You okay now? Asked Nikki, hoping for a response. Michael didn't respond. What do I say now? What do I say now? Bring up another story of how he impressed me. Michael, do you remember that one night a gang of numbskulls were trying to hit on me when we were at a bar in the Bronx? The idiots were sitting to my back, and their ringleader, that skitty guy something, kept bashing his head into the table, coming up with blood, as if trying to impress me, and then you... But now Nikki saw that old bridges she had built up to Michael were slowly beginning to burn away. He just kept bashing his head into the table, sitting to my back. As I tried to ignore him, and then you... Michael, you remember that story I'm talking about, right? But Michael said nothing. Michael now had an extremely bitter look on his face, and Nikki decided maybe she had to say it. She had to bring it up. Maybe the truth behind it would be enough to establish something again that had been lost. Michael, do you remember that night at the Tropic when we first met? Cringed out Nikki again. As Nikki looked at Michael's face, she noticed him grow somber, hearing it. Oh, I don't want to do this, thought Nikki. You know how I told you I wasn't a nice girl, how I was never sweet. Well, it's all true. Michael's face began to frown up. At the time, I manipulated you two to spite Mary, disclosed Nikki as she saw Michael's face grow dumbfounded. What? What? Mary had done something to piss me off, and I thought if I screwed you, I could get back at her. Disclosed Nikki. Michael now seemed confused, like he didn't know where to begin, where to end with the story he was hearing. Nikki then understood that there was no going back, and she had to continue. After that night, Mary just wanted nothing to do with me. I guess mission accomplished, said Nikki, feeling like a royal piece of shit. Michael then seemed to drift back into his setting. His face went expressionless again. The grayness of Attica began to set in again as he went back to eyeing another couple arguing to his left. He seemed lost for words, not even seeming disgusted by Nikki, nor seeming to acknowledge she was there again. Michael, how do you feel about what I just said? Asked Nikki, lowering her head again to face Michael. Michael just shrugged. Michael, I'm so sorry. Why did you bring up that story? Asked Michael now with a stir of discontent. And Nikki now really wondered why herself. What am I doing? He doesn't want to hear this. I just had to, Michael, to say I'm sorry. Michael then brightened up a bit. Oh, don't worry about it, said Michael, but not seeming all too convincing as he shook his head slightly. Michael, I'm so sorry I broke you two up. What do you mean, broke us two up? Roxana? She left for Rochester because of her father, because the man had come down with cancer, and we just never got back together, responded Michael with a passive look. Nikki then realized Michael hadn't even gotten the truth, how Roxy really felt about that night, and now Nikki went back to questioning herself if she should really continue. Don't do it, don't tell him, don't. Michael, that morning, while you were still passed out on the roof, I tried to leave, but Roxy walked up to me and spat in my face. Then she tried to claw at me and I fought back and... What? Cried out Michael, completely blown away from what he was now hearing. I socked her in the mouth and knocked her to the floor and she fell crying and... Nikki sighed. What? Gasped Michael at complete upheaval. Well, she started calling me out, although nothing I haven't heard before. Piece of shit, whore, fucking cunt. How could you do this to me and Michael? And then she got up and spat me in the face again while I just stood there. Michael's face looked like it was about to fall off hearing this. Nikki knew it was an expression that could only mean disgust. I didn't even expect her to show up there. How stupid could I have been? When she did, I saw how heartbroken she had become, seeing as to me and Michael had slept together, and I felt ashamed, and then the only thing I could think of doing was having her join in, seduce her, so maybe that might have kept you two together. As stupid as that all sounds, that's all I could think of doing. I didn't want things to go that far to break you two up. Thought Nikki, but didn't say. Wait, I should though. Thought Nikki, but instead felt like telling the ugly part that came next. Wait a second, I should tell him that. It might make me look better. She also said if I wanted to have that dog of a man so bad, I could have him. Told me that, don't worry, he really is a pitiful dog in all its nature. He'll stand by your side through everything, and he'll do anything a woman tells him to, as long as there's a treat to it. Said Nikki, feeling like the greatness of Attica setting in deeper, making her feel strangely cozy. Michael's face didn't change much. Only difference Nikki saw now was he was massaging his forehead, trying to ease his mind from whatever tension building up inside. After that, I went up to look at you again. I thought about what Roxy had said, and I decided, why not? Explained Nikki as her eyes glazed over vacantly all around. Nikki looked at Michael's face again, and now she saw a lot of tension trying to hold back what he really felt. Trying to hold it back as hard as he could. Nikki then got scared for a second and didn't know what to make of it. She didn't know if he was holding back anger, bitterness, or disgust. And then again, it didn't even seem like none of those. Nikki decided to hold off, jump into conclusions, and felt like going on to see if she could open Michael up more, to see what his real feeling about the matter really was. I lied, Michael. I didn't fall for you over what you did with Gracie. I mean, not initially. What you did with Gracie blew me through the roof. But what really got me into you was that moment. Michael lifted his eyes and looked at Nikki straight, still holding back something Nikki couldn't trace. Every man I've been around, actually not just men, women too, have done nothing but turn on me after they eventually saw how I really was. Call me those names, piece of shit whore, fucking cunt, and guys like Greasy thinking I can't wait to have a train ran on me, thinking I'd like it, and thinking I deserve it. When I saw you laying there, I thought about what Roxy had said, and I decided that's what I wanted in my life, what I needed. Someone I could have complete, I don't know, something like my parents had. since they've been my only example about stuff like this. Nikki then sighed and allowed herself to accept it. There was something pitiful about it all. About you, about me, and made me think that maybe that was the answer, said Nikki. But then Michael did something that completely threw Nikki off. Michael could no longer hold how he was really feeling hearing this, and then broke out with a gleeful smile like he was pleased with it all. Nikki now grew dumbfounded over how Michael could possibly feel that way. Michael, how can you smile to what I'm saying? Roxana lied to you about her father. She left you because she was disgusted with both me and you. And then I decided I just wanted you because I felt like you were something I could control, someone that can be there for me. And Nikki then realized that what she was now doing was the complete opposite of everything she set herself up for. She was no longer trying to put a spell on him to draw him close. She was now giving him reasons to hate her and make him want to break away. No, I can't let that. Michael, maybe Gabe was right. We should just go our separate. Nikki then stopped, as a wrench inside cried out, "No!" "You want to leave, Nikki?" asked Michael, seeming distressed. Nikki shook her head, and after a good minute of trying to think of what else she could possibly say, unsure of her own intentions, Michael finally had something to say of his own. "Nikki, I cheated on you left and right because I thought you were just going to leave me in the dust. Rich girl like you, what the fuck did you want to do with a punk like me?" blurted out Michael almost all at once. Nikki now felt beside herself. All that time she thought Michael was doing it for another reason. "Oh, you really had no clue how I felt about you, did you?" "Michael, why would you think that?" demanded Nikki. Michael shrugged. "Well, you were dead wrong," declared Nikki as she stamped her face into it. "I'm sorry for doing all that." "No, Michael, it's okay." "No, it's not," said Michael. "What do you mean, no, it's not?" "Because that's why you abandoned me after I went to prison," cried out Michael as the room full of convicts and their visitors went silent. Nikki realized now that she really had abandoned him. His heartbreaker, womanizing, cheating ways had practically destroyed everything she felt for him at the time, and that had led her to abandon him. Once he went to prison, all she could ever think about him was how much he had cheated on her, and how the truth of the matter was, with all the control she felt she had over him, she could never control that. "Nikki, when I saw you at 1999, why were you so cold to me at first?" demanded Michael, as his face began to break up again. Nikki thought back to that moment when she had stepped out of the drapes. She remembered her first feeling of seeing Michael again, and what she remembered was all the bitterness blowing up inside her. All those years it had built up, and seeing him again had made it burst. All she wanted to do then was treat him like she would treat anyone else. She felt like everyone around her were better enemies, and she hated them, and she now wanted to hate Michael too. "I hated everyone there. I hated everyone. And I can't believe I ended up hating you as well." She wanted to be mean. She wanted to see him as every other prick in her life. She wanted to be vicious, cruel, and demeaning. But the more she wanted to hate him, the more she began to remember the reasons why she at least loved him. And it really broke her heart to see him glare at her like he wanted to kill her, too, later, in her offices. Since he had once been the last person to ever expect that from. Now Nikki felt like she had to go deeper, even though she didn't know where it would take her. "Michael, I'm a possessive fucking bitch. I'll admit it. Seeing you that first minute at 1999, all I could think about was how much you wronged me in the past. You were the only person I really had in my life, and you were never mine to begin with. So that night, I remember Madboy telling me..." And then she paused. "Oh, I can't tell him this. This is the worst one yet. How he planned on shooting you if you got out of control, and part of me wanted to see it happen." "No, not Michael. Just that cheating side of him I hate. I've always felt like there was two of him in there, and I wanted one of them to go away." Michael's eyes lit up, and Nikki almost felt like panicking. "Would you still want to see that?" asked Michael as he glared at Nikki with all the sense and emotions of a forgotten man. Michael, when he pulled out that gun, something snapped in me. I went hysterical at the thought that I was willing to allow it to happen. I felt like there was something seriously sick and evil in me. And when I saw Madboy fly out the window, part of me... Nikki paused. Before that, I felt like I just wanted you to go away. After that, I felt like I never wanted to lose you again. And when you saved me from Dorian... Nikki began to smile as she did, recounting the story about Greasy. Everything I ever felt about you came bubbling back up, and twice as strong. Recounted Nikki as she smiled. But then... grew discouraged that Michael didn't seem to be buying it, even though she knew she was being completely genuine this time. Michael, I'm so sorry. I can't even believe I told you that, explained Nikki. How do you feel about how I cheated on you now? Asked Michael plainly. Michael, that was a long time ago. I can be over that now. What you said, you cheated on me because you thought I would eventually leave you? I could understand that now. You're doing it out of spite and resentment at the thought that I would. That makes sense, and I tell you now, I would have never done that, explained Nikki, and believed it. Can you? Yes, I can, Nikki. I remember you saying how much you cheated on me left and right, but never Roxy. What did you mean? Asked Michael. I don't know, Michael. That's just been on my mind for a very, very long time after what Gabe had told me, replied Nikki, feeling a bit worn out by Michael's questions. Why? Michael, I said I don't know. Michael stared at Nikki and frowned again. I'm sorry, Michael. A part of Nikki then grew furious. Oh, as Nikki then realized that Michael was making her apologize for the wrong he was doing at the time, and Nikki swelled up with distraught over this. But not enough to bring it up or blame him. Why do you think I cheated on you? Asked Michael plainly. Nikki sighed. I felt because of what I did to you and Roxy, you always resented me for it. And that's why you cheated on me, and when you never cheated on her, started Nikki, feeling exhausted. Nikki looked at Michael as she saw his eyes scan left to right and then blow out a sigh. Wow. Maybe there's some truth to it, responded Michael. Nikki cringed hearing that. She liked Michael's excuse better. It had more to do with how he had been mistaken than being really her fault again. Better it to be a mistake than someone's fault. And not just that, Michael now disclosed. What do you mean? Asked Nikki in concern. I mean, after what you did, I guess it kind of sparked something in me. I mean, I've always been a flirt, but I was never that much of a womanizing jerk until I met you, explained Michael as he glanced over at Nikki when he mentioned her. I was a lot more inexperienced than you at the time, and you blew my mind away with how much of a sex-crazed heartbreaker you were. And I guess I kind of liked it, responded Michael as he grew a small smirk, which irritated the shit out of Nikki to see. I wish I hadn't, responded Nikki, realizing she really did have a lot to do with it. Nikki, why did you come across as being sweet to me? Asked Michael plainly enough again. Michael, I was never... I know, but it seemed like you were. I don't know, maybe... Nikki tried to close her eyes and search her feelings, but couldn't much, considering how much of them were hung over with the feelings of distraught and exhaustion from this whole exercise. Nikki felt utterly lost and confused by everything, and she didn't like feeling this way. She didn't feel like she had any control over this conversation, and the direction Mike was steering things was uncharted territory. And also, it kept seeming like the more and more she spoke, the more skeletons were to start coming out of her closet, things that she feared to bring up, since she didn't know the effects they would have. All I wanted to know is if he still wants to be with me. But it seems like we're just going back and forth, back and forth. I can't even tell what's going on. Nikki completely felt out of her element. It almost felt like her head was spinning with all the emotions and thoughts and questions. And she then looked into Michael's eyes and began to feel angry with him for the first time today. Hasn't he gotten the message that I want him still? It seems like he's purposely trying to be mean and unfriendly to me. This isn't the Michael I know. Who is this guy? Nikki sighed. Nikki, were you pretending to be like Roxy to keep me around? Asked Michael, holding a plain stare again. And then all of a sudden, it hit. Oh wow. Nikki found herself again in this uncharted territory, but fully acknowledging what she was seeing as if it wasn't. As the observation Michael just made brought her center, this was a major revelation. At the time, seeing Michael laying so pitiful up on the roof of the tropic, all she could do in her mind was delve into the fear of whether or not it was going to work out. Nikki at the time in those days mostly only knew how to spark a one-night fling, one special sexual encounter and nothing else. She didn't know how to go beyond that, beyond sex, to the place most people go in a relationship. She had never had a real relationship with anyone before, and ever since, one-night eruptions of lust and desire had become her tasteless bread and butter. So she had no clue of what to do, and she couldn't take the examples her parents left her with, considering how they were together. I think one of the things that's really ruined my chances of ever finding a viable relationship has been because of the horrible examples those two horrible people left me with. Once theirs began, hers and Michael's, she didn't know what to do. All she knew about Michael's preferences in women were what she saw in Roxana. All that sugar and spice that I definitely wasn't. And since Nikki had no sense of self-worth to believe in just being herself and letting Michael either accept or deny that, she changed herself. Oh, did I? Just in that week, had changed her hair, her clothes, her attitude, and she didn't even understand when it happened. Oh, no wonder I've spent years thinking about that woman, years and years, turning it almost into a habit, obsessing about her in ways. I don't understand why it was at the time, but couldn't stop. Roxana Blue had become an example, something Nikki wasn't and needed to strive for, since Nikki saw her as being better. And I did think that way about her. Nikki felt blown away realizing this, that she had been this committed to having the idea of a man like that. An idea. Just an idea at the time and nothing else. All that commitment and effort put in for the hopes of an idea coming true. Something about me and Michael meeting felt like planets aligning, and I had to then. Nikki then realized that she was willing to go that far to get him. Maybe she did care. I was willing to change myself for him, for the possibility of what our relationship would turn out. And I think I really liked being sweet. Can that be enough? Nikki also realized now how much Roxana had become symbolic for her in a way, representing everything that was wrong with her, being the heartless bitch that stole someone else's man and tried to keep him for her own selfish needs of controlling him. Roxana was the girl Michael really deserved, and Nikki had taken him away from her. I guess I did, Michael. I guess I did want to become her, because I figured she was better than what I was, said Nikki. Feels like a black hole in my heart. I don't know how to explain it.